What point will people realize, like, this is coming after everybody? He's coming after everybody. Anyone that is a dissident at any point, he's going to come after. White House plans broad crackdown on liberal groups. Some of the highest ranking officials in federal government used Charlie Kirk's podcast, guest hosted by Vice President J.D. Vance, to lay out their plans. Trump administration officials on Monday responded to the activist Charlie Kirk's assassination by threatening to bring the weight of the federal government down on what they alleged was a left-wing network that funds and incites violence, seizing on the killing to make broad and unsubstantiated claims about their political opponents. Investigators were still working to identify a motive in Mr. Kirk's killing, but the Republican governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, has said that the suspect had a leftist ideology and that he acted alone. The White House and President Trump's allies suggested he was a part of a coordinated movement that was fomenting violence against conservatives without presenting evidence that such a network existed. America has seen a wave of violence across the political spectrum, targeting Democrats and Republicans. On Monday, two senior administration officials who spoke anonymously to describe their internal planning said that cabinet secretaries and federal department heads were working to identify organizations that funded or supported violence against conservatives. The goal, they say, was to categorize left-wing activity that led to violence as domestic terrorism, an escalation that critics said could lay the groundwork for crushing anti-conservative dissent more broadly. The reason why all of the very prominent, very visible right-wing content creators and right-wing accounts on Twitter have been actively saying, Hasan, you foment violence. Hasan, you foment violence. Hasan, you want violence to happen to conservatives. You want unlimited violence to happen to conservatives. You're a violent figure. The reason why they're doing that, the reason why they're escalating it, the reason why the reason why they got the knives out is for this, so they can get the attention of the most Twitter-facing administration of all time to play a role in trying to silence political opposition, to try and silence political dissent. Okay? That's it. And it's ironic because if this was a different administration, and we were talking about this, like, there are organizations out there that are violent, that have been prosecuted by previous administrations, both left and right. Okay? Atomwaffen is a great example of this. Prominent neo-Nazi groups, Patriot Prayer, and all these other established neo-Nazi networks are responsible for a lot of violence and a lot of domestic terror on U.S. soil. This is a reality that the administration itself has recognized as well. The Department of Justice also released a study. What the NIJ, National Institute of Justice, released was their own research about domestic terrorism. Okay? NIJ-funded research projects have led to a better understanding of the processes that result in violent action, factors that increase the risk of radicalizing to violence, and how best to prevent and respond to violent extremism. Now, the reason why we're looking at this page that was on the National Institute of Justice government page on the Wayback Machine is because they deleted it. They deleted this study. The Department of Justice removed this study from their webpage. The reason why they removed the study from their webpage is because when they investigated further on what kind of dangerous radicalization was taking place, both online and on U.S. soil in general, that leads to the overwhelming majority of violent extremist actions, domestic terror on U.S. soil, they found out that it was more often than not right-wing. Militant, nationalistic, white supremacist, violent extremism has increased in the United States. In fact, the number of far-right attacks continues to outpace all other types of terrorism and domestic violent extremism. Since 1990, far-right extremists have committed far more ideologically motivated homicides than far-left or radical Islamist extremists, including 227 events that took more than 520 lives. In this same period, far-left extremists committed 42 ideologically motivated attacks that took 78 lives. A recent threat assessment by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security concluded that violent domestic extremists are an acute threat and highlighted a probability that COVID-19 pandemic-related stressors, long-standing ideological grievances related to immigration, and narratives surrounding electoral fraud will continue to serve as a justification for violent actions. A lot of conservatives used to always talk about, 1984, George Orwell, 1984. This is unironically 1984 shit. George Orwell himself was also an anti-fascist, right? He was also anti-Stalin, but he was, he went and engaged in anti-fascist acts. His gripe was towards authoritarianism in general. Maybe sometimes he got a little heavy-handed, a little bit of an anarchist tendency. But regardless, right? he was very clearly talking about fascist authoritarian mechanisms of control. And this very same book that the Republicans kept repeatedly talking about over and over and over again, okay, this very same book that Republicans kept talking about over and over and over again is actually being implemented in real time. The don't believe your lying eyes, okay? Up is down, good is bad, bad is good, all at the behest of this fascist project. So perhaps it's not that strange, ultimately, that the likes of Nick Fuentes are gaining prominence in this dangerous media landscape. This is one of the things that I was going to show you as well.
Raise your right hand. All right, everybody raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I will kill and die for Nicholas J. Fuentes. Raise your right hand. All right, everybody raise your right hand. Repeat.
Like, this guy is saying, I'm a violent threat, okay? That guy right now is getting boosted by Elon Musk and has been. Mr. Christian right here, Mr. Wholesome Christian right here, is claiming that I'm the violent, dangerous radical. Now, of course, maybe in the eyes of this current administration, they might also see me as the violent, dangerous radical and him to be an ally.
Can one of these women just get it together before I kill all of them? No, I'm kidding, of course. I would never wrap my hands around a... Look, I love everybody. Look, I just love everybody, and I just hate violence.
Anyway, getting back to this current administration and their priorities, some of the highest ranking officials in the federal government used Mr. Kirk's podcast, The Charlie Kirk Show, to lay out their plans. From his official office at the White House, Vice President J.D. Vance served as a guest host of the podcast, inviting senior members of the administration, including Stephen Miller, the president's top policy advisor, to praise Mr. Kirk while also detailing their plans to crack down on what they call leftist non-governmental organizations. The show was broadcast on the television screens in the White House briefing room and in several West Wing offices. In their comments, Mr. Vance and Mr. Miller spoke in vague and menacing terms about far-left groups that they said facilitated violence. Okay? Here's one of the clips.
We have to make sure that the killer is brought to justice. And importantly, we have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism that has grown up over the last few years. And I believe is part of the reason why Charlie was killed by an assassin's bullet. We're going to talk about how to dismantle that and how to bring real unity that can only come when we tell the truth and everybody knows that they can speak their mind about the issues of the day without being cut down by a murderer's gun.
Which is why what we are going to do is prosecute and arrest, maybe even deport all political dissidents, which is not, of course, a violent act at all. Bro's going to tank his show with his negative aura. I think you guys are still at the joking stage. And you're not realizing how sincere and serious this problem is. I'm going to be honest with you. We are living in unprecedented times. The administration is dangerously extremist, dangerously radical. But because it is the administration, we have this false notion that whatever they do is normal and it's normalized. And I think a lot of liberals do not understand exactly what is happening
in the last few days for unity and for healing in the wake of Charlie's assassination. You have no idea how desperately I want that, how gratified I was when Democratic friends and even former Senate colleagues reached out to offer their condolences to me. I'm so thankful.
By the way, this was my opinion. Does the assassination of Charlie Kirk represent a significant turning point in American history, or is it just another incident in a series of politically violent acts? 48% say just another incident. This is what I tried to speak to with all of the different media hits that I did with the New York Times op-ed that I wrote, that Americans are so desensitized to violence that they look to yet another instance, even if it's a high-profile figure, even if it's a figure that was beloved by the right, and they go, okay, well, you know, it literally, a school shooting happened with a far-right neo-Nazi shooting up and critically injuring two of his classmates an hour after Charlie Kirk was shot. Like, they see it so much. Americans see it so much that it's not something that they consider to be all too unique. Like I said, while who Charlie Kirk was or how much of a beloved figure he was for at least like some of the powerful people within the MAGA movement. The expectation that Americans are going to be so desensitized to violence because of our overall inability to address the systemic reasons as to why this kind of ultra violence takes place with regular frequency, to then turn around and be like, well, this one is different. For many Americans, they're not going to see it as that. I mean, this is still significant, by the way. 40% saying that this is a significant turning point is definitely larger than the 30% that you would expect to say is a significant turning point. You know, the people that say, this was my radicalizing moment. And it's like a guy who has been a Nazi for the past decade. You know what I mean? It's like, no, bitch, this wasn't a radicalizing moment for you. You keep using every moment as a radicalizing moment. You say Cracker Barrel is a radicalizing moment. You say woke is a radicalizing moment every single time. Okay? But the reason why this is a dangerous number is because that means that there's at least 10% that were in the margins that have been that have fed into all of the both liberal media and right-wing media consistently pumping this up and saying that this is like this is a significant turning point for America. They are coming after white Christians or whatever. Like, people are subscribing to that notion. Here's Greg Gutfeld
and Carrie
saying, we don't need more information. What's interesting here is why it's only happening on the left and not the right.
It wasn't school indoctrination. Kerry Lake went off on that. He was in an online apprenticeship program at Dixie Technical College, which I don't think was changed. I would just say when he changed. Yeah.
If Americans are desensitized to violence, wouldn't that also apply to the people in the admin? I feel like that needs to happen. Is Kirk's funeral next Sunday, along with some new Epstein news jobs for us to move on from this? No, the administration doesn't give a about Charlie Kirk either. They knew him, they loved him, they hung out with him and his family. Donald Trump was asked about Charlie Kirk the other day. He literally immediately started talking about the ballroom he's building. What more do you need to see from Donald Trump to recognize that he does not give a shit about Charlie Kirk at all? Now, I know Republicans will hear me say this and say, how dare you, Hasan? Donald Trump loved Charlie Kirk. Everyone grieves differently. But it's pretty clear that he cares more about how he can utilize Charlie Kirk's death as a point of martyrdom so he can prosecute political dissidents and doesn't give a shit about a friend he lost along the way. I will go so far as to say the only person that I've seen that is still a cynical grifter, but truly felt human in that brief moment is Candace Owens. Outside of Candace Owens, I ain't seen a single goddamn Republican even take a brief moment to be like, here are the amazing moments that I shared with Charlie Kirk, my friend. Okay? Candace Owens seemingly grieved Charlie Kirk harder than his wife did. It's crazy. Why do you think the U.S. is so easy to fool around with this leftist extremism hoax? Is it the Red Scare in history, or is it just plain idiocy? It's both. If the trend wouldn't be started in the U.S., we wouldn't talk about this in the U.K. and Europe either. But this is the beating heart of capitalism, the global domination over communism, wherever it might have been fomented, okay? America won the Cold War, and it was a very costly process. And America has been suffering since its victory over the USSR as well, because in the aftermath of the dissolution of the USSR, we reached an unprecedented level of super profits that are constantly expanding, and in the process of that expansion, that unlimited greed has created an environment where the working poor get shafted worse every single year, okay? That's what happens when you have no safeguards. That's what happens when there's no counterbalance. So, of course, this country that successfully destroyed any alternative vision for an economic evolution is going to have an audience of receptive, brainless losers who will then turn around and say, no, it's not. The systems that we exist under are not the reason why we're suffering. It's the Guatemalan migrants. It's the transgenders. Okay, well, Donald Trump is doing unlimited warfare to all of those groups. Does it feel like things are more affordable for you? Wake up. At some point, you have to recognize that it's actually not the trans neighbors that you have that are destroying your lives, that are dominating your lives. It's not the Guatemalan immigrant that is just working a factory to make sure that, you can get cheap goods and commodities that you can consistently consume. That is actually the reason why you feel like you're never going to be able to own a home or retire at a reasonable age. We exist under the complete domination of global capital, multinational corporations that are owned by people who have no loyalty whatsoever beyond expanding their profit margins when profit rates have a tendency to fall. They will constantly seek out extra profit margins everywhere they can. And the only malleable aspect in the commodity production side that can be squeezed is labor, whether that be seeking out new labor markets after you have dominated them through war and designing a system of unequal extraction from the global south, or whether it be gig economy jobs that are readily available for all so that you can always have a cheap servant at your disposal through your phone. But when one side of the equation, when an alternative vision is cast aside as dangerous, scary, violent, Americans find themselves in this drunken stupor as they sleepwalk towards fascism, because there are other alternatives. When capitalism inevitably creates economic pressure, when capitalism inevitably creates these shocks within the system, fascism thrives because it's seen as a way to restore the hierarchical order by force. That's how it works. That's how it worked in Nazi Germany. That's how it worked in Mussolini's Italy. And that's how it's working here in the Western world. It's not just the United States of America. We say jump. Those European leaders say how high. They are completely and utterly servile in a way that is impossible to ignore now. Why is it impossible to ignore? They come after spending years and years shitting on Donald Trump, calling him an orange buffoon. They come and they genuflect. They come and they say, yes, sir. Yes, master. We will give you more tithing. We will do everything in our power to make you happy. So if you're wondering, if you're following from Europe and you're looking at all the chaos that's unfolding in America and you're saying, oh, well, at least we're not here. At least it's not happening here. You're looking into the future, okay? You are looking into the future. For years and years, Europeans would come into my chat and be like, Hasan, you guys are such fools. You're so silly. You're so stupid. We don't have this kind of shit in Europe. And I told you, I warned you, I said, what happens here today will happen in Europe tomorrow. And in the last decade of me constantly saying this, you saw the rise of AfD in Germany. You saw the rise of nationalists in France. You saw the rise of the Reform Party in the UK. Fascism is everywhere in liberal capitalist countries. And they are going to do the exact same thing that Donald Trump is doing right now when they have a little bit of the grip of power, okay? When they control the levers of power, they are going to turn around and they're going to suppress dissent. They're going to violently and physically apprehend you. The only way out of this, the only other alternative out of this is socialism. The only other alternative out of this is to talk to your neighbors, organize in your communities, explain to them that it is actually global capital that is destroying their lives, because these people do not actually hide in cigar smoke filled back rooms where they fantasize about what to do with you, where they treat you as cattle. They do it in broad daylight. They do it at the World Economic Forum. They do it at Davos. They do it at the G10 summit. They do it at these summits where they get together and say, hey, we all have our class goals, right? We are aligned by the same interests. They do it in broad daylight. And the only reason why they can do it in broad daylight is because so many of your neighbors, so many of your friends have been deluded into thinking that the socialist alternative is dangerous. The socialist alternative is scary. That, oh my God, there could never be a better system than the one that we exist under. And the other system is scary and dangerous and violent. That's it. I've been warning about this moment in American history for the past decade, every single day. Every single day. They won't even let you in on a crumb of the profits, the super profits that they are generating in the heart of Western Empire. And they won't even do it as riot tax. They won't even offer you modest social democratic reforms. because they know they can get away with it. They know that your attention will go elsewhere, okay? Today, you tap in. Today, you tune in, but tomorrow you'll forget about it because they know that even if you do pay attention to it, you will inevitably feel discouraged. You will inevitably feel like change is an impossibility. And therefore, you'll seek out nihilism. You'll seek out appropriate targets that you can go after. You'll seek out areas that seemingly are more malleable, people that are more accessible, like your least favorite Twitch streamer or your least favorite content creator, this or that. These systems are seemingly impenetrable. And that's why I understand why people are so malleable and why people fight amongst themselves, because they feel like maybe it's easier. Maybe it's easier to just like have the government pack up vulnerable populations that I've been taught to fear. Okay? That's it. There is no difference between a black person and a white person. There's no difference between an undocumented migrant and a documented migrant and a natural-born U.S. citizen. No difference whatsoever. Not even a little bit. Everyone has unlimited potential. It is up to us to unlock said potential. But people, unfortunately, are held behind through systems of inequality. And the people that refuse to address those systemic to address the systemic inequality would rather have you servile, would rather have you deluded, would rather have you angry and fighting amongst yourselves. It's not different from when Lenin presented this reality, and it's not different right now. I'm not saying something that is new, okay? This has always been the design. The only difference now is that capitalism is completely won. It has dominated our lives. It has dominated our existence. We take it for granted. We think it's a part of the human nature. We can't even envision an alternative reality where we say, hey, can people get a little bit more in return for their productive labor, for their output? No, that's socialism. That's terrifying. That's bad. Why do you want to reward lazy people? They're not working hard. And this is not a CEO saying this. This is not the owner of a mega corporation saying this. This is Americans who work that are saying this. Think about that. They've been so brainwashed and so brain broken that they turn around and say, people just like me, people like me, working an honest job, people that look exactly like me, people that have the exact same class interests, they're bad people. They're the real enemies, actually. And not capital, not capitalism. God forbid. And they toil away and they get their little treats on the sideline so that, you know, for a brief moment, they feel a sense of autonomy, a sense of purpose in their lives, a sense of humanity in their lives, and they just move along with their day. And change seems impossible. Change in the appropriate direction seems impossible. But as material conditions worsen, day in and day out, people get resentful. People get angry. And there's one party that takes that anger, that captures that attention, that captures all of that enmity, and redirects it back to targets that are vulnerable, targets that are easily dismissed. Because most people don't care. Most people are too self-invested. Most people don't have time to care. Most people are too busy trying to make rent. Most people are too busy trying to afford their groceries. Most people are too busy with the fear that if they, God forbid, something terrible were to happen, they're going to be saddled with medical debt. So in that process, they get more and more angry. And then when someone comes along and says, you're angry, and it's because the groceries are too expensive, right? But you know who's made the groceries too expensive? The Guatemalan dude that is slaving away in 100-degree heat to make sure that you can have tomatoes. That's the reason why your groceries are expensive. And when we deport that guy, instead of offering him the dignity that he deserves, that everyone deserves, but he deserves more than many others, okay, for toiling the land for a goddamn decade, when we kick that guy out of this country, then groceries are somehow magically going to be less costly. It's bullshit, but people believe it. And the reason why people believe it is because there is no one out there in a position of prominence that turns around and says, how the is that going to help? What is this? This was you warning Europe in 2023, poorly clipped. I mean, I've done it way before 2023 as well.
Times I've told you European
keep laughing from over there at America, you're just basically laughing at your own future. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is now, okay? It's here. That corporate brain rot, that hyper-capitalist brain rot that slowly but surely has eroded your own constitutions, your own checks and balances, the pervasive influence of lobbying that I told you was coming to your countries. It's been happening for the past 10 to 20 years. And now you're finally starting to see the worst aspects of it. And get ready, because the other side of it, it's already existed. It's already been in existence in places like Sweden and whatnot, where like any kind of immigration is seen as like the main reason for why society's awful, any kind of like awful feeling that you have due to existing under this like these crippling conditions are directly related back to immigration, directly related back to refugees, directly related back to Islam, when, you know, it has nothing to do with that at all. So there's that as well. And now you have the police that are supposed to be controlling the population, that are there to protect and control, protect and serve the interests of capital, take carte blanche approaches to you know, wanton violence that is unchecked, unrestricted. And it's going to get worse. It'll never not be wild to me to see an entire nation in a state of disarray and unrest, with mass mobilization happening in public over one singular teenager being shot at a traffic stop. And of course, I'm not trying to belittle or minimize the violence that you are seeing, right? But I'm simply an American. So when I see a 17-year-old get shot at a traffic stop, I think, well, that's a Tuesday. Our police force kills 1,000 civilians a year. This is why you will never be at the level of Charlie Kirk. You know, I actually wear that as a badge of honor. Charlie Kirk was an administration hatchet man. He was a regime propagandist. He was beholden to whatever the Republican Party wanted him to do. He was a mere vessel of Republican propaganda. I mean, he obviously made the correct bet. After presenting himself as an anti-Trump voice, he turned around and demonstrated complete fealty to Donald Trump, and he was rewarded for it. I mean, he got invited to the White House. He became a trusted advisor. This is true. There's a reason why I am not the equivalent of Charlie Kirk on the left, because the Democratic Party is antagonistic to many of the things that I'm talking about. My goal, the way I see myself, the way I see my role in this process is to try to help people arrive at the conclusion that the danger is here. It's not even just like knocking on our door. It's inside of our houses. It's inside of our homes. It's inside of our minds.
And I know there are so many like them all across our great country. I am desperate to wrap my arms around them as we all unite to condemn political violence and the ideas that cause it. Psalm 133 tells us, "Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head." Oh, how badly have I craved that precious ointment in recent days, and I believe we can have it. But first, we must tell the truth. It's the only way to honor Charlie.
Dude, come on. We must tell the truth. Coming from this dipshit, this administration, how ridiculous. These people have never told the truth, man. Never. Not even a little bit. It's so crazy to see them posture as like truth the advocates of the truth, defenders of the truth. ICE budget is nearly $200 billion, an increase of like 800%. It would have only cost like $50 billion to house all the homeless veterans. Why didn't they do that instead? Are spending the money on overtime for current employees? I wonder why. It just doesn't. These guys, for a lot of people, I think it starts and ends at a very simple position, which is they're not like me and I'm scared of them. Okay? And Republicans build on that tribalistic sentiment. That's all it is. And there's plenty of stereotyping that you can accidentally or deliberately pump your brain full of to continue that fear. How else? How else would you arrive at a position that like these people are actually here to destroy the country? They're not just here to work. You don't understand. It's so stupid.
For what was he, if not a man who told the truth in every place, in every environment? Now, the most important truth Charlie told is this, that long ago a man, begotten, not made, came down from heaven, and by the Holy Spirit was incarnate of the Virgin Mary and became man. For our sake, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate and suffered death and was buried and rose again on the third day. Charlie believed, as I do.
Dude, it's crazy that it's just like so much of the fascist rhetoric is like wrapped around Christianity, like this fake ass Christian bullshit. Like, who the is this for, man? It's just, look, I've never been an anti-Christian type. I've never been like an anti-religion person. I myself am not a spiritual person, not a religious person at all. Okay? And I know many people in this community are, and I always yell at them, and I just can't get them to turn the other cheek. But god damn, dude, some of the most visible aspects of like Christianity in the United States of America are just horrible monsters, dude. They just literally masquerade as religious figures. They wrap their fascist policies, their hateful rhetoric with the cloak of Christianity, with the cloak of religious doctrine to make you think, oh no, we're doing this for some higher purpose. No, the you're not. You're an evil piece of shit. It's so obvious. It's crazy that people just can't see it.
That all the truth he told flowed from that fundamental principle. I really do believe that we can come together in this country. I believe we must. But unity, real unity, can be found only after climbing the mountain.
This is not Christianity. This is evangelism. They put an emphasis on money. It's demonic, using Christ's name in order to do evil shit. I know. Prosperity gospel is so f***ed up.
Of truth. And there are difficult truths we must confront in our country. One truth is that 24% of self-described, quote, very liberals believe it is acceptable to be happy about the death of...
Bro just said, here, after the first 2 minutes of talking about the Bible and Christianity, let me tell you, you should hate your neighbor. Okay, your neighbor, if he's a libtard, thou shall kill. Actually, not kill. Thou shall hate your neighbor over misunderstandings, please.
Of a political opponent, while only 3% of self-described very conservatives agree. 3% is too many, of course. Another truth is that 26% of young liberals believe political violence is sometimes justified.
What's really funny about this, by the way, is that the understanding of violence, I think, in the minds of every population in the Western world, especially in like liberal capitalist democracies, the understanding of violence is not when the state does it. That's permissible. That's not violence. That's something different. It's rules and regulations that has to happen. It's only violence when someone that is a non-state actor is engaging in it, even if it is in self-defense. An example that I always use is the reflection of the Black Lives Matter protests. It's not violent when taxpayers are met with armed thugs of the state that use chemical weapons on them, but it is violence if those very same taxpayers turn around and bring leaf blowers to blow those chemical weapons, that tear gas, back in the direction of the armed thugs of the state that they, with their tax dollars, actually gave the gear to. It's violence only when someone pushes back. It's never violence when the state does it. So, of course, conservatives that rely on pre-existing hierarchies of violence will live in this false notion, live under this false notion that, like, what do you mean? I'm just demanding more police brutality. That's not violence. That's just the state doing its job. I just want it to do more of its job. That's how it works. That's precisely the reason why they don't see themselves being like incredibly violent. Think about it. When conservatives talk about doing violence to entire swaths of the population, they are able to shelter that violence under the advocacy of the state. They can say, they don't have to turn around and say like that they want to kill every trans person. They can say trans people are weird and scary and they're predating on our children, and therefore the state must do something. And when the state does do something, whether it be shutting off trans people from getting medical aid, for example, that's not seen as violence. That's just seen as the state doing something, right? How's it going, domestic terrorist? John Brown was considered a domestic terrorist, for the record. Terrorism plays a similar role, okay? Terrorism plays a similar role. The notion that like people that resist against state violence, unlimited state violence, are all terrorists. John Brown, that was a Christian right there. Straight up.
And only 7% of young conservatives say the same. Again, too high a number. In a country of 330 million people, you can of course find one person of a given political persuasion justifying this or that or almost anything. But the data is clear. People on the left are much likelier to defend and celebrate political violence. This is not a both sides problem. If both sides have a problem, one side has a much bigger and malignant problem, and that is the truth we must be told. That problem has terrible consequences. The leader of our party, Donald J. Trump, escaped an assassin's bullet by less than an inch. Our House Majority Leader, Stephen Scalise, came within seconds of death by an assassin himself. And now, the most influential conservative activist in generations, our friend Charlie, has been murdered. This violence, it doesn't come from nowhere. Now, any political movement, violent or not violent, is a collection of forces. It's like a pyramid that stacks on top, one support on top of the other. That pyramid's got a foundation of donors, of activists, of journalists, now of social media influencers, and of course of politicians. Not every member of that pyramid would commit a murder. In fact, over 99% I'm sure would not. But by celebrating that murder, apologizing for it, and emphasizing not Charlie's innocence, but the fact that he said things some didn't like, even to the point of lying about.
No, notice how that's a part of the prosecution as well. That's a part of what they are seeking to address as well. Because it's not just about, it's never been about real unlimited free discourse, of course. It's about punishing political opponents, and it's about making sure that not only is there no dissent, but also that you have to celebrate it, okay? I get to be racist, and you can't even call out that as racist because that's violent. That's real violence. Not my dehumanizing language, my advocacy for state-sanctioned violence to happen to you and others that look like you. That's not violence at all. You calling that out, that's the real violence, actually. How dare you? How dare you be divisive? And it's not even going to end there. You have to also present a positive posture about all of this, lest you be considered a political dissident. It's not enough that you say, this is up. It's not enough that you mourn or grieve. We want you to celebrate his life by force. This is the vice president saying this, okay? This is the government saying this. It's a little bit different than the random blue check marks that you see that are fantasizing about what must be done to political dissidents. This is the government also leaning into that.
What he actually said, many of these people are creating an environment where things like this are inevitably going to happen.
Do liberals have a huge part in creating this dynamic? Yes. Their inability to address real harms that people were experiencing and then losing to the incompetent fascist Donald Trump twice, refusing to fight back, create procedural hurdles every step of the way, organizing the population in ways that they didn't even do in ways that can't even reach the standard of like 2016 hashtag resistance movements. That all is an abdication of duty. It's crazy. I mean, I haven't heard a peep. I have not heard a peep. This is, for all intents and purposes, whether we like to admit it or not, whether we think it's appropriate or not, this is the major story. And it's actually had an impact. Like, this is a major story that is continuing, right? A lot longer than other pivotal moments that have taken place that has dominated people's minds for an extended period of time. I mean, this is reaching the level of Donald Trump getting shot on the campaign trail. And yet, what have you heard from prominent Democrats? What have you heard from prominent liberals on this issue? Nothing. Where are the Democrats? They're nowhere to be found. I said this already. If the media environment is dominated by right-wing sentiment and there is no left flank counter messaging, then people start taking that shit for granted. They start believing it. This happened with the immigrants, the anti-immigrant narratives. I said this over and over again. I warned over and over again. Americans are not as anti-immigrant as you think they are. Okay? They're not. When presented with two options, conditional amnesty, conditional mass amnesty, and mass deportations, Americans still choose conditional mass amnesty. And yet, there was not a single Democrat that actually presented that alternative. There was not a single Democrat that presented that alternative when they were in power, and there was certainly not a single Democrat that presented that alternative when the election cycle was taking place. And these were running around saying Haitians are eating cats and dogs, openly admitting that they were lying. J.D. Vance himself did that. That good Christian.
It wasn't school indoctrination. Kerry Lake went off on that. He was in an online apprenticeship program at Dixie Technical College, which I don't think was changed. I would just say when he changed. Yeah. I'm just saying we need more information before you
Charlie Kirk at a dinner table.
We don't need more information.
Really?
Yes, we don't need it. What is interesting here is...
Yeah, we don't need more information. Don't look into it further.
Why is only this happening on the left and not the right? That's all we need to know.
What about Vance
There's absolutely no cognitive...
What about Melissa Hortman that we just talked about?
You want to talk about Melissa Hortman? Did you know her name before it happened? None of us did. None of us were spending every single day talking about Mrs. Hortman. I never heard of her until after she died.
She doesn't matter?
Don't play that bullshit with me. You know what I'm saying is there was no demonization, amplification about that woman before she died. It was a specific crime against her by somebody who knew her. The same. Now you could bring up Josh Shapiro, but then you will not bring up, for example, that was a pro-Palestine person. So don't use your, what about this?
Yeah, that guy was, I'm pretty sure, just a schizophrenic dude, but also his party affiliation was not with the Democrats.
The fact of the matter is the both sides argument not only doesn't fly, we don't care. We don't care about your both sides argument. That shit is dead.
It's not even a both sides argument. There's one side that is responsible for the bulk. I don't remember what the political affiliations of the Josh Shapiro guy was, but I do know 100% that he thought Josh Shapiro was kidnapping his children. His immediate relatives said that he was experiencing a schizophrenic attack. The idea that this is like an act of pro-Palestinian domestic terror is insane. Anyway, getting back to the administration tackling left organizing and liberal groups. In their comments, Mr. Vance, J.D. Vance, and Mr. Miller, Stephen Miller, spoke in vague and menacing terms about the far-left groups that they said facilitated violence. Mr. Miller said that a formal effort would be coming with federal agencies rooting out what he referred to as domestic terror movement, and that they would be doing it in Mr. Kirk's name. With God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, eliminate, and destroy this network and make America safe again for the American people. They praised Mr. Kirk's commitment to free speech while threatening to exact a price against the far left that they accused of fomenting political violence in America. An administration official said officials would be investigating people behind the recent burning of Teslas and assaults against immigration agents, and would be looking to draw links between those episodes and organized liberal groups. In the wake of Mr. Kirk's killing, Mr. Trump immediately blamed the radical left for much of the political violence in the country and appeared to excuse violence on the right by saying that it was driven by people who don't want to see crime. When the right does violence, it's actually for good reason. They just don't want to see crime. You know, like black people, like undocumented migrants, brown people. Okay? What is your backup platform if you get silenced on Twitch? Guys, this question is really funny because I don't think the problem in front of us is that I will continue to be able to do commentary on Twitch or another platform. I think the problem is the administration might actually stamp out any sort of leftist commentary in general and try to criminally prosecute them. That's what these guys are agitating for. I mean, it's all over my timeline. I'm sure you've seen this as well. I mean, here is, once again, American neo-Nazi Nicholas J. Fuentes of Hispanic background, regardless of his white supremacist, Christian nationalist positioning. Hasan Piker should be banned on Twitch and then deported back to Turkey. And before people sit on our side cry about hypocrisy, remember that you can't say the word simp or the R word on the platform, as though this is the same thing as the government deporting someone who is an American citizen. I'm an American citizen, and you totally can say simp. You can say the R word too. I choose not to, but you know, Twitch is not prosecuting anybody for that. But think about the idiocy of this statement. There is a word you can't say on Twitch, which is Zionist, ironically enough. Shouts out to the ADL for that one. They actually do stamp out any sort of person from saying, you know, Zionist this or Zionist that. But you can openly incite murder against conservatives. No, you can't. You cannot do that. Enough is enough, he says. But that's not the only thing. That's not the only thing that I've seen. There's like, what was it like? I saw an account that was like crypto leftists be like, deport Hasan, arrest Hasan. And Elon Musk is going crazy over it. You forgot the C word, the most dangerous of all? Yes. TikTok terms and conditions have changed, and a load of prominent left-wing political commentators are having their accounts permabanned. They will stamp out discontent everywhere. Beginning of the end, it seems. Yes. Like, look at this. He's like crying like a SJW. Look, it would be deeply ironic if Charlie Kirk's death was used to wipe out his life's work on free speech. I think anyone suggesting we take away people's right to speak, which, by the way, I don't think he had a lives work of free speech anyway, but that's not enough. It's too late for that now. Why don't you start by disavowing your piece of shit nephew and his repeated calls for violence and glorification of terrorism? Let's start there. The guy who's saying that also said this.
With Hitler and that guy, Hitler, I want this guy dead. If I was in a room with Hitler and that guy, me and Hitler would team up and that guy up. We would kill that guy. Hitler would hold him down and I would beat him to death.
Bro, what the seriously, be careful. The president also promised investigations into who was funding and organizing the left, suggesting the violence was somehow coordinated. John Cohen, an intelligence official who worked in the Biden, Obama, and Bush administrations, said the United States was immersed in an epidemic of targeted attacks and mass shootings, but also noted the administration's claims before the investigation into Mr. Kirk's assassination had been completed. The results of the investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder have not been released, and it's unclear whether law enforcement has a full and complete picture of what motivated this individual. It is not the job of law enforcement or the government agencies the police thought, he added. It's the job of law enforcement to prevent acts of violence and criminal activity. Were you supposed to debate Charlie Kirk? Yes. What do we do when you get banned? It's just keep pushing. Keep organizing. Just keep it pushing. You're just going to live your normal lives, okay? Will we be talking about Kirk 60 days from now? No, but it doesn't matter because it's not about Charlie Kirk, okay? It's not about Charlie Kirk. This is the administration's agenda. What they are doing in this moment is using Charlie Kirk's assassination to create an environment to try to get people on board with a mass suppression campaign of political dissidents. Okay? The Rumble live chat while Miller was speaking. Stephen Miller blames a vast domestic terror movement and says the White House will use the DOJ and DHS resources to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name. Here it is.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized...
By the way, make no mistake, these guys are anti-Semitic, but they hate the left a lot more. You want to know why I know that? Because when Ethan Klein, who is pro-Israel, spent the last year trying to deplatform every prominent left-wing critic of Israel, they chose to work alongside Ethan Klein. They openly would, they didn't even hide it. They were like, I can't believe I'm choosing the Jew over the socialist in this situation. I can't believe I'm choosing the Jew in this situation. Because they don't have any sort of like real firmly rooted worldview whatsoever. Not that it would be good if their worldview was firmly rooted in anti-Semitism anyway. But just make no mistake, this is all ultimately a nihilistic way to try and dominate people who they feel embarrass them, make them look weak.
Street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence. It is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen.
Groups that prefer politicians like AOC, Bernie, and Zoran over Schumer, Jeffries, and Pelosi. Latinos plus 30. Democrats plus 20. Under 45 plus 18. Women plus 16. No college plus 8. All voters plus 3. But you know what we should do? We shouldn't have left populist candidates. I think what we should do is find reasonable, centrist, third way neoliberal Democrats who will, of course, always be unconditionally pro-Israel. That's the important thing here.